You're listening to the Career Plus Life Catch-Up, episode number 74. Welcome to the Career Plus Life Catch-Up, a show anchored in reality to help you create a balanced life where you enjoy both your work and your life, because you don't have to choose. I am your host, Cecile Ferry, a corporate executive turned coach and working mom. This is your place for insights, advice, and tools to optimize your career direction, balance, and confidence. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get into it. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the podcast episode this week. It's going to be about women again, and I feel like between the last episode, number 73, and this one, there's a bit of a theme, and there is no planning around it. It's just sheer inspiration, and it happens to be both around International Women's Day, so I'm just going to take this perfect kind of out of the sky alignment between the topic and what's happening right now, because this is another episode for all of you, my women listeners. And it's one that I am bringing to you with a sense of responsibility and deep care. And I'm going to try to do the best job that I can right now. I mean, I always do, but today I feel like even more inspired and empowered to deliver this message. So you would have seen at the title, Women Not Supporting Women. Like, this is a bit negative, right? And yes, in a way it is. I am not going to sugarcoat it, because it's a topic we must talk about, and we must talk about with a sense of reality. And I will say, even myself, for years, I refused to see this because everything in me said, no, this wasn't true. Like, this didn't sit well with me. It wasn't really possible, right? Maybe there were some women not really supporting women, but in general, this wasn't happening. But fast forward to today, and over time, I have gained enough experience to, unfortunately, having seen enough evidence of this happening around me, around the workplaces I'm in, around the workplaces of my clients. So this is true. There is such a thing as women not supporting women. And again, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today, there are some generalizations that I have to make. So please, use your own critical thinking. I can't do blanket statements. It doesn't mean it applies to every woman. Absolutely not. But there is a phenomenon called women not supporting women. It happens enough for me to want to talk about it. And I'm not here to talk about how women are great at supporting women. That happens, thank goodness. And that is beautiful. But today I want to talk about that aspect that is happening around us and what we can do about it. Because seriously, who wants that? We don't need that as women when we are trying to close the gender gap, if we are doing that to our own gender and our own female counterparts. So I want to raise this conversation here as a way to contribute my way to changing this issue. And my hope is by the end of this episode, you would have learned some insights and some mechanism that you can apply to reduce this issue in your world, so that you can better understand what's happening and you can better plan and better react if it is happening around you. So as I said before, this is very timely around International Women's Day, and you probably would have seen some beautiful panels of women all getting on. This is great. Mind you, I was even watching an International Women's Day webinar as earlier this week, where I got to see some of that happening live on the webinar. So sometimes it's not even behind the scenes when you pay attention. So why I'm here is because this has to evolve and this has to get better. And I believe that we can collectively as women, because it's a major impediment to women themselves. It's an impediment to their career growth and to their own happiness levels. So are you ready to get stuck into this pretty deep, pretty realistic, yet super important conversation together? Let's get into it. So first things first, what am I talking about? When we're talking about women not supporting women, what does that look like? How does this manifest? I'm sure as you're listening to this, you've got some very maybe fresh examples in your mind throughout your career, throughout your girlfriend's career, that unfortunately you can name quite a few situations and you may have been on the receiving end of that lack of support. So I'm just going to give you some examples. They probably would resonate with you or someone that you know, but you also, I'm sure, have your own. Examples are like this. It could be a woman discrediting another in front of people or just directly to herself, and sometimes quite consistently. It could be a women leader taking the credit for another woman's work. There are also a lot of aggressive or non-supporting behaviors. I'm going to list a couple just as examples: bullying, discrimination, verbal criticism and attacks, refusing time off, not helping with workload, having double standards for some women in the team and some men in the team, and the list goes on there. There is also competitiveness between two women, especially in front of other people. Typically, you will see one woman coming up against another and trying to look better. And this is very much a masculine energy where you have to dominate, you have to win, and you have to impress. You have to make your own mark, right? And mark your own territory, and you feel threatened by someone else's territory. Another example is selfishness at work, putting others down, all the way to toxic behaviors. For example, throwing a woman under the bus or gaslighting her. And unfortunately, I'm sure you can think of life example as you're saying that. Another example is harassment or abuse, which can be verbal or mental. Other more subtle examples are to be too busy to help younger female counterparts or to provide constructive feedback, all the way to not providing feedback and then just firing the people that you don't want to work with. And this can really start even purely at a relationship level where a woman just starts working with you and from the get-go you feel something is off. They just don't like you. Okay, so we talked about all those examples about women behavior in the workplace. And I will say here, men can be guilty of a lot of these traits too towards women. So women are not the only one to not support women. Men are pretty good at that too. But that's not what I'm talking about here. The point I'm making is that women have a choice to support each other and to face, therefore, into the male patriarchy. Because men themselves tend to behave a lot more as a pack and they stick out for each other. And it's like a survival instinct that they have. But for women, very interestingly, the survival instinct comes out as putting another woman down. The survival instinct isn't collective, it's individualistic. So that's why in this episode, I want to talk more about the fact that women do this as a survival instinct quite often, and men don't do that towards men, right? And before I close off this section on what's happening, what are we seeing, I must mention this, and I include myself right here. When we talk about women not supporting women, it's easy for us to be standing here and saying we've been the victim of that. But I really, really want to raise the question here once. And I want us to, just for a minute, think back and look at ourselves and ask this question. When have we done this ourselves to another woman? Because I can tell you, and I'm standing up here in my integrity, and I cannot say to you that I have never ever done that. Because some of those behaviors, and I'll get to that in a minute, are unconscious or they're driven by unconscious beliefs and behaviors. So that's why I think quite a lot of us, we must have done it at one point or another. We may have seen a woman and felt jealous about her success and felt like putting her down. We may have said something not in a nice way. we may have felt threatened too and taken some kind of reactive actions. So before we talk about, why this is bad, that all those women do that, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we have done that sometimes ourselves to other women. And that after this episode, hopefully we'll be more aware and we forgive ourselves anyway. It is in the past, it is done, we can't change it. But I think it is so prevalent, unfortunately, that nobody is really immune to it. But I'm going to give you some really clear guideline lines and you'll get to understand it so much more that you can rest assured that you're not going to be the worst offenders when it comes to that. Okay, so now we're getting into the super juicy part where we're going to talk about why is this happening. And here I am giving you my theory, my opinion. So a little disclaimer here. This isn't coming from research. I'm not borrowing thinking from anyone. This is my own thinking. And I have quite a few factors that I have listed here. So bear with me. Number one, I believe women are genetically less secure and they're more vulnerable. And this is because when you think back to the first generations of humans, we were never designed as women to be out of the cave, go out there hunting for food and being possibly faced with danger. So we were designed to stay in, to mind our babies and to feed the family. So we have evolved over time, but not that much that even in our DNA and genes, we don't have the same strength. We don't have the same power and sense of security when we are out there than men do. We are less secure if we have to go in an arena that isn't safe for us. So that's the first thing. And it's that fundamental insecurity which partially contributes to unsupportive behaviors. To this, I will lay on top that from a design point of view, women take their feelings as fact. They listen to their feelings, they trust their feelings, which is a great thing in some circumstances, not so much in others, but they take their feelings as reality and they act on them. And men are fundamentally different from that. And besides, in today's world, men have suppressed their emotions so much more that they're not in touch with them. So they're not acting on them. So that's another fundamental difference. Likewise, if we look at the evolution over time with the different generations, all the women I'm talking about here likely didn't have a mother working in a challenging environment. All the women we're talking about that are not that supportive, if you look to their moms, they were probably either not working or working in a very different place where they didn't feel all those potential threats and forces and things around them. So those women, their moms, don't have the skills and didn't pass on the skills to get on in the workplace and to deal with the dynamics and the challenges of working with sometimes a high number of people, navigating through politics. So those women, because their moms didn't pass on that knowledge to them, they have to work this out by themselves. And typically that happens through a lot of trial and errors. Usually it takes a long time for women to figure out they've been bad managers, right? Because they don't know how to do that. And here I'm especially talking about professions like female doctors, lawyers, government executives, scientists, engineers, business leaders, right? Because often those jobs were not held by their own mothers. They're like the first generation of really fully working, sometimes full-time in those roles and growing into those careers. So they're paving the way, literally, that generation of women. So I think that's one of the reasons why they don't know how to be as supportive of other women, because they haven't been modeled this the proper way. And I will say it could even be worse, so that if they were working themselves, they may have been reporting to women They were really Generation X, the first generation to really break into the workplace. And they faced so much discrimination, and the gender gap was so much bigger at the time that those women had to turn on a completely masculine energy in order to survive. So if that is the model that they got, it's not a good model either. Okay, I'm still going on the various reasons why this is happening. And here is a really big critical piece, in my opinion. I believe that women carry a lot of trauma, and I would argue more trauma than men. So what trauma am I talking about? I'm not talking here about the major trauma as in what we traditionally associate with trauma. I'm talking about more the everyday trauma that I think now the psychology body of knowledge is starting to really understand, recognize, and talk about. Example, trauma of having been neglected as a child, or being silenced, or not feeling seen, applies a lot to women. Of having been harshly criticized or pushed to perform to very high standards. Some women have been abused. Some have struggled with fertility issues, or pregnancy or birth trauma, PTSD, bullying, having to be the parent at an early age, body image issues, right? So these are all examples of trauma. I'm sure there's some more. So what I'm saying is women carry a lot of things. And even throughout the pandemic, research and studies show that women were even more impacted on that level too. That's why it continues happening. So those trauma in turn make women more vulnerable. Their nervous systems are more activated and their tendency to be triggered is higher. They are more emotionally reactive because they're suffering from the impact of those traumatic experiences on their well-being and on their sense of self-worth. And here I will say a lot of their behaviors are triggered by their unconscious minds. The trauma lives in the unconscious mind that keeps bringing it back in the background unconsciously to them because they don't feel safe, because they are still thinking their survival isn't 100% assured. So what's happened is all that trauma created a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of fear, a lot sometimes of need for control because you have the fear and the negative self-talk from their childhood. So this still sits in the subconscious mind, and a lot of women are not even aware of it and how it directs their thinking and their action, and it manifests. Actually, I would say if some of those women that have displayed behaviors that are not supportive of other women, if they were to be confronted about it, would probably be quite shocked themselves. And I speak of experience. So I think, we have to have that lens to see those women as what they are fighting, to see those women as what they are dealing with, what they are struggling with internally. They are trying to do so well themselves. It's so important to understand that perspective. And we don't know what trauma they really have, right? But I guarantee you, chances are they will have some or combination of the things I mentioned. And I know that as a coach because I coach mostly women, and I tell you that I see those examples and those real scars in pretty much all of my clients. It's just different stories, different shapes and forms, and depending on their journey, how much they worked on that. But women carry that pretty much in general. It's a given. Men have their trauma too. But again, I believe women have got a higher share of these. So I want you to really get that somewhere those women are hurt. And you know the saying, hurt people hurt people. Hurt women hurt women. That is a mirror. I can't go further into detail. That could be its own episode. But let me keep going with other factors. So we can add to this, to all that trauma and how it manifests in their own insecurities. We can add to this that women are genuinely being more tired than men because they carry a bigger mental load, they sleep less, because who is going to mind the kids? It's usually the mother. So they have less energy in general and less patience at work. So they have less energy and less patience at work than men. And P.S., men only need by design about 6 hours of sleep a night and women 8 hours. So talk about gender gap there too, right? So women, you can pretty much count on that. I'm going to be tired and I'm going to be running low on patience. And then finally, I think there's another big piece here lying in the women's life stages. Here I'm mainly talking about women who are mothers versus those who are not. Because I believe that women are more supportive of those in the same life stage as them. Childless women support other childless women quite well and don't support that well working moms, whilst working moms support working moms really well. Again, this is a generalization, but look around yourself, because when I wrote this episode, I was thinking, do I know an example of the contrary? And I cannot think of one single example in my life where this hasn't applied. I've had terrible bosses who didn't have kids when I did. And here's the difference. The women who don't have children have their main identity anchored into their work. It is who they are. Their identity is completely wrapped and sucked into their work. If they don't perform or see themselves as successful, they will feel like a failure as a person. So they usually don't have enough other parts of their lives that bring them purpose. Their status at work is vital for them to feel like they exist and that they are enough. On the other hand, women who have children have their focus on a much larger variety of things. There are things like raising good kids, spending time with their family, running a peaceful, comfortable home, nurturing, all of those things, which in turn grows their emotional intelligence. Women without kids don't have that experience, don't have that breadth of life, if you like. And it would take them a lot of time to build the equal skill as working mom when it comes to emotional intelligence and social intelligence. That is my opinion only. So things like understanding conflicting demands on your time, understanding the energy pools, understanding the very essence of being a working mother or the need for flexibility. These are things that are quite vastly different between a female person in the workplace who has kids versus one who doesn't. And the female person who doesn't have kids in that regard behaves very much like a man in the workplace. So I believe this is really a fundamental big piece that shapes up why some women are not as supportive. They're not equipped. They don't have the same depth of experience, the same mindset. It's kind of like running two different operating systems. And by that, I'm not making any judgment saying one is better than the other. And I know that some women who don't have kids is not by choice. And I'm not saying that working moms are better or have a higher status either. I'm just saying life has taken a different journey for some women versus others. And the content of that journey is directly impacting the ability of those women to relate with each other and to support each other. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what to do. What can you do to limit your exposure to women not being supportive with you? Number one, sounds pretty logical. Surround yourself with the best possible female in the workplace. It's not always possible. Sometimes a brand new manager arrives, you don't have a say into that. But for instance, when you're interviewing, when you're looking for your next job, I would really advise you to choose your female boss carefully. Find out if they have children. because you need to really try to align in life stages. It will foster your career growth. You will benefit from greater understanding. It will be easier for your manager to support you if they understand your life stage. And if you are currently in a job and you're not surrounded by those kind of female, I will say be conscious and see if you can make an internal move to a different team where you have those kind of women around. Because there are a lot of those women around there too. But you learn to spot them. And you know what, by the way? It's pretty quick to figure out what sort of working style a woman has. It's quite easy to know what she's like to work with. It doesn't take long. So always make a mental note, especially if you're in a pretty big workplace. Who are those women that you know will be supportive, and who are those that have a lot more of those insecurities that are completely hidden, including to themselves, that I have described just before. And if you don't know, try to get some feedback from people that have worked with different women before you go and work with them. All right, so that's number one. Number two, don't naturally expect support and understanding based on gender. So when you're women, sometimes it feels quite easy to relate with other women, and we naturally expect them to be on our side, right? A bit like men do. But following what I've just described, actually a lot of women are not that capable or designed for that, because their own survival isn't assured. And you can't even see that, you think, right? So unfortunately, those women are not going to be that supportive to you. So it is sad but realistic, but I want you to not let your guard down. If you are being managed or working with female, doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. Don't fall for the easy little chat, the little giggles, the friendliness, the camaraderie, right? Because that's superficial, and women are really good at doing that. But don't let your guard down, because it's not because you're women working together, bonding together, that you're going to get the support. So, and always remember their roles and their places versus you, and their authority levels, especially if they are your managers. They are still your boss, they're still your manager, or they're still your colleagues. So beware, and do not let out your guard down too much, and do not give out all your trust really quickly, or put your guard down in a way that makes you vulnerable. Okay, tip number 3. If you have a bad start, if from the get-go, something is off in your relationship with your boss, don't give up. Because this just shows, if you see someone that comes and who is not warm and friendly and supportive, right? You know now, it shows they have a lot of insecurities. And if you start giving out negative energy back in response, this will only make things worse for yourself. This won't really change her, and this will just affect your own experience and the way that you show up, and ultimately your performance. And you will be classified as the difficult person. So the strategy here, if this is happening, is for you to get interested in them. Ask them questions and genuinely care. Make them feel valued and make them feel like they've got some great things going. But I'm saying do this with care and genuine care. In a way, pump them up genuinely, and also empathize with what's going on with them. So it's like an investment of your time, and it will over time soften those women and will bring their own guards down, because they will feel safe with you because you show that you love them. You know, remember, like inside that woman is an inner child that is wounded, pretty much. So if you hit back, guess what's going to happen? If instead you approach them a little bit like that mother or that father they didn't have, and you show nice care and you treat them well, and they realize there is no danger around you, they don't have to be on and protect themselves, that's when their guards are going to come down, and they are more likely to be more supportive of you because you're not a threat. Number 4, extend a hand. There is nothing better to disarm an unsupportive female then to extend the hand and be supportive to her first. When you show her that there is nothing to fear, that she's safe, when you give to her, she will naturally relax and reciprocate. Case in point, I've just witnessed this again on a webinar this week. I was looking at two women talking on a panel that happened to be quite competing with each other because they were talking about programs each of them were running in their businesses, and it started turning out like a pitch between the two, and they were clearly a bit head to head, and it's like, my program is kind of better, right? And no, my program, rah, rah, rah. So that's where I saw the women not supporting women, right? And later on, one of the women extended a hand during a question. She started praising the other women for the work that she had done in that space and invited her to build up on her answer because she would be more qualified than her for that, right? And guess what? Suddenly the other woman was the nicest person to her because she could relax. She wasn't threatened, and suddenly they were besties, right? This is what happens. When possible, take the steam off, have a top-line perspective, and be the one to extend the hand. The other women will never bite back. On the other hand, it will feel safe for her. So you have to create the safety first. And it takes that. So if someone is unsupportive to you, be supportive of them. And that will in turn get them to change and start being more supportive of you. And my last tip, number 5, is to manage your own mind around those women. Because you cannot control their minds. And as you've seen what I've discussed today, some of it goes back a very long way. And you are not a psychotherapist. So you can't control it, and you can't really change it, and you can't help them. What's at play is their own traumas and their own insecurities. So yes, I wish we could all psychologically scan all our female bosses and colleagues to know, which one have a lot of trauma, are they likely to be supportive or not? How great would that be if we had that kind of tool and scanner? But unfortunately, we don't have that option. We just know everyone comes with different levels of that. Sometimes you can get a feel from an interview, so that's where it's really important. But it's a given. They come with a package, right? So what happens is you need to accept that's how they are. The more you're trying to fight, that's first step. You wish reality was different than what it is, you're creating yourself some additional suffering. First thing. And then you need to ask yourself, what are you going to do about it? Because you cannot change them. So what else is available to you? Can you tolerate some of those behaviors, or can you not? Can you work with them, or can you not work with them? Another good question is, what skills, including emotional skills, do you need to build and to develop in yourself in order to work harmoniously with those women? See, that's what I touched on some episodes. Like, this is also an opportunity for you to learn something, to grow. This is happening to you, if I can put it that way, so that you learn to cope with those kind of personalities, male or female, and that you develop new skills. You up-level yourself so that you are not knocked down by those personalities. You don't let it get to you, and you don't feel discouraged, or you don't just quit because of someone like that at work. Because you know what? You go to the next company, there will be another unsupportive female person like that. So it's also a call for you to develop new strength, being resilience, being tolerance, being openness, being empathy, connection, influence, all those skills in order to grow your own self at work and outside. So we're now wrapping this episode, and in conclusion, if I ask, are women unsupportive of women? Yes, it is a thing. Sadly, but that's the truth. Will it change quickly? I doubt it, because the change at an overall level will come only once those women have done their own work at their own individual level, their own work of dealing with their emotions, dealing with their insecurities, dealing with their trauma. And when they've learned not to project all of that onto others, which, by the way, they're also doing in their relationships, in their communities, in their friendships, in their family, right? It's not just, they don't just keep it for work. So when those women feel safe and loved and feel enough, they will be supportive of anyone. So they need to fill their cup and their world with positivity and safety first. And then they can be the version of themselves that supports others and propels them. Some women do this very well. Some women have done so much inner work, have got so much emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. They know their triggers. They have dealt with a lot of their limiting beliefs, and they're now able to help a lot of others do the same. And why do you think we have so many female coaches, right? So women are actually great at doing that work, that inner work. It's way easier for female than it is for male because they don't even know what they're feeling. So women, our design works well for that, for us to do that inner work. But what I'm saying here is until the majority of women working out there are working on themselves, it's not going to change at a collective level. But change is happening. As I said, more and more women are stepping up and are empathic, caring managers using their female leadership style of energy, and more women are helping out, be they coaches, be they therapists, be they, in organizational development, in helping people in the workplace perform better. So until we get to the place where all of the work that is already happening starts being more widespread, more contagious, until then, until more women work on being confident, on dealing with their insecurities and on projecting it onto others. Until then, beware, my friend. Don't get activated yourself and don't become one of them, even like unbeknownst to you. And try to be the one extending a hand. Remember that. Now that you know how that woman is feeling deep down, and she may not even know it yourself. So compassion is always a very good word to use in any of those situations. So to close it off, let me just remind you that the number one thing that you can do to help change this situation, to have more women supporting women, is to work on yourself. That is all that you need to do, because that will make you more supportive and there will be a ripple effect. Every woman needs to work on herself. That is the only way this will start changing and happening. And if you are on that journey, congratulations. And finally, can I say a huge thank you to all of you for supporting me, because you're here, you're listening, you're passing on feedback, you're reaching out, and I absolutely appreciate and love you for all of that. So thank you so much for your support over the years, and it is my absolute pleasure to continue supporting you in the next years to come. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful week, everyone. I'll speak with you soon. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to find out more information, you can visit my website at careercatchup.com. There you will find blog articles, free resources, a self-study course for your career direction, and ways to work with me. It's at careercatchup.com. I hope to continue to connect with you and support you. Talk to you soon.